Within Labor, Sam Dastyari was Mr Huang's key contact. As the party's New South Wales General Secretary and then as a senator, Dastyari has welcomed hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from Mr Huang.
Demonstration, Mr Huang, of how highly you're respected, how much all of us respect you and the work you do.
An incident that occurred in June 2016 leaves little doubt that Mr Huang expects something in return for his donations. In the lead-up to the federal election, he promised the ALP $400,000 in donations. But then, at the National Press Club, Labor's defence spokesman Stephen Conroy criticised Beijing over its land grabs in the South China Sea, flagging the ALP would take a more aggressive approach in the disputed territory.
Now, when it comes to regional security challenges, like the South China Sea, the Turnbull government has hidden behind ambiguous language while refusing to be upfront with the Australian people. By contrast, we believe our Defence Force should be authorised to conduct freedom of navigation operations consistent with international law. And while
after this speech, Mr Huang reacted decisively to the apparent attack on one of the Chinese Communist Party's core policies. Four Corners has learned that Mr Huang called the ALP and told them that because of Conroy's comments, he was cancelling his promised $400,000 donation.
It's precisely the kind of example of economic inducement being turned into economic leverage or coercion. In other words, it's a classic example of a benefit being provided but then withheld as a way of punishment and as a way of influencing Australian policy independence.
Just one day after Stephen Conroy's comments, Mr Huang appeared at a press conference alongside his Labor mate. Contradicting his party's position, Senator Dastyari told the Chinese media that Australia shouldn't meddle with China's activities in the South China Sea. When his comments were reported several weeks later, he tried to explain.
Why did you
hold
that press conference and make those comments on the South China Sea?
Okay, so this is a separate matter, and I don't want to get to this.
Or is it a separate matter?
I support the Labor Party position on the South China Sea. I support the Labor Party position. I support an international rules-based system with international norms where the rule of law is applied. Now, that has been my position. That remains my position. That is the Labor Party position on the issue of the South China Sea.
It wasn't in that press conference.
Look. Now, while I can't be held directly to words that were held at a press conference that I don't have a transcription of in front of me. Let me be clear. I support the Labor Party position on this issue. No, Andrew.
Amid the media storm, the press seized on Mr Huang's previous payment of $5,000 to Senator Dastyari to pay an ALP legal bill. Another Chinese donor had given him $1,600 for a travel bill. The senator fell on his sword.
So look, I'm going to be making a short statement and I won't be taking any questions. This has been a difficult week, and this afternoon I've made a difficult decision. Today I spoke to my leader, Bill Shorten, and offered my resignation from the front bench, which he accepted.
Last year, Mr Huang sought more political help. He had applied for Australian citizenship, but his application had stalled. It was being secretly scrutinised by ASIO. Mr Huang began lobbying his political contacts for assistance. Four Corners has learned of one politician who agreed to help. Labor Senator Sam Dastyari. Four Corners can reveal that after multiple requests from the billionaire donor, Dastyari's office contacted the Immigration Department to query the progress of Mr Huang's citizenship application. In the lead up to the election, Dastyari's office made 4 separate approaches to the department. It's understood Dastyari made 2 of these calls himself. Four Corners has made several requests to Mr Huang for an interview. He's declined. Nevertheless, we caught up with him in Sydney.
ABC Four Corners, we'd like to ask you about your relationship to the Chinese Communist Party.
我们就想问你一些问题，我们就想问你的关系跟中国的共产党。
我没有任何关系。
Why have you asked Australian politicians to help you get a passport?
你为什么问就是澳大利亚的政治谈判，就是帮你弄一个身份，澳大利亚的身份？
这我不回答这个问题。
In a statement, Mr Huang said he took strong objection to any suggestion it linked his donations to any foreign policy outcome. Mr Huang's citizenship application is still being reviewed by ASIO. The signing of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement cemented our vital relationship with the world's new economic superpower. As Trade Minister, Andrew Robb spent years negotiating the deal. His position brought him in contact with another Chinese billionaire, Ye Cheng, head of the Landbridge Group.
Investment agreement between Landbridge Group and Westside Corporation Limited.
Landbridge recently spent $506 million to secure a 99-year lease for the Port of Darwin, a hugely controversial deal in light of the company's close ties to the Chinese Communist Party.
I think Chinese companies understand that if they can actually help to satisfy the strategic and political objectives of the Communist Party, that will ensure their prosperity. It will give them access to cheap finance, and it's something which makes the senior leadership of those firms, more prominent and successful in the context of Beijing politics.
The Minister for Trade and Investment.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker.
Before last year's election, Andrew Robb stepped down from government and his final senior position as Australia's Special Envoy on Trade. A few months later, it was revealed he'd been appointed as an economic advisor to Landbridge.
And what about your own role at Landbridge? Because the Prime Minister said he hadn't been notified about...
No, why should I? He said to me why he did...
Well, we've got the Australian Defence Association...
I'm sorry, I've now left politics, right?
We've got the Australian Defence Association and the opposition are jumping up and down about...
They're all playing politics.
Questions about ministerial conduct and all that
Well, again, they're implying that I will act unethically, and where's the evidence? I mean, I've been a senior cabinet minister. I know the responsibilities that I've got. I've got no intention of breaching those responsibilities.
Andrew Robb's confidential consulting deal can now be revealed. Robb was on the Landbridge payroll from July 1, the day before the election. From that date, he's been paid $73,000 a month, or $880,000 a year, plus expenses. Andrew Robb declined an interview, but told Four Corners he's acted in line with his obligations as former Trade Minister.
I respect, as the Prime Minister said, Mr Robb has a right to go out and earn a living once he's left Parliament. But, he was a Cabinet Minister for many years, and I think now providing advice to the leadership of the Landbridge Group was possibly a step too far, too quickly in terms of his departure from politics.
Questions around how Australia and its leaders manage the relationship with China are central to the nation's most important foreign policy debate. Australia must maintain its growing ties to its most important economic partner. But we must also confront the fact that some of the interests and practices of the authoritarian one-party state conflict with our own.
there's an awareness of a problem, but the agencies themselves don't have the mandate or the wherewithal to manage the problem. All they can do is sound the alarm and alert the political class. The political class needs to take a set of decisions in the interests of Australian sovereignty, in the interests of Australia's independence of policy making, to restrict and limit foreign influence in Australian decision making.
After being briefed on the Four Corners Fairfax investigation, the Attorney-General sent us a statement revealing the Prime Minister has asked him to conduct a major inquiry into Australia's espionage and foreign interference laws. Senator Brandis said the threat of political interference by foreign intelligence services is a problem of the highest order, and it's getting worse. Senator Brandis says he'll examine whether the espionage offences in the Criminal Code are adequate, and expects to brief Cabinet on possible changes to the law before the end of the year. We'll watch with interest. Good night.